Hey, deserving listeners, sister wives, let's check it out.
I've spent a lot of years not knowing where we were. You know, both of us have just been avoiding any sort of anything with our relationship. So I just pushed Cody away. I did. He's not the one that I should have pushed away.
Yeah. And I wonder if Cody would see this, he would lean in. I think there's a possibility, at least I would hope, but she doesn't show this to him, which I wonder what that's about. You would just hope that she would show this to him. Maybe she will. Maybe that's what Cody intuits. It's like, well, with Nancy, she'll help her to do this, because I think, or she hasn't in the camera, in the edit, she hasn't done this vulnerability, and that's always the key. You know, either way, being vulnerable would help, and it would move things forward. It would either motivate Cody to care and to lean in and to begin the repair, or it'll just clarify things and you can just be yourself. I say this as just general advice for all of us, including myself, that vulnerability is the answer to happiness. It can feel sad in the moment, or you can feel the pain in the moment because you're being vulnerable, but this is the way.
And I don't know what you want anymore.
Well, I want a peaceful, a kind, and a safe place.
So do I.
How have I not been?
Yeah, I keep hearing it from him. He wants to feel safe. And I think it's tempting to look at Cody as this jerk-face, cold person, but he's a human being. Of course, he would feel unsafe around her because she rejected him. She did something that would have been really hurtful. I'm really, it feels tempting to say that he didn't care when she pushed him away, but we don't know, you know? And so from this language, at least if we just assume that he's a regular human being, and I don't know why I have to do that, but I guess I am, then he doesn't feel safe, and he wants to feel safe. He wants to feel like if someone's going to try to influence Mary from the outside and say that he is a horrible person, because that's the other thing. They keep referring to the communications, and I'm wondering if he saw the leaked exchanges and saw, yeah, I think this is likely. Maybe y'all know that the catfisher provoked Mary to say some really horrible things about him, and those things were leaked, and he feels like, I can't trust this person. I mean, which would be rational to think, right? Yeah, to know that you're the love of your life, your person, your soulmate, was just out there talking utter shit about you to strangers on the internet. You know, like it would be, you would not feel safe.
Cody, I need to be able to come to you with something that I need, even if it's just a ladder, without you saying, I can't do it. Without you saying, it's just too much for me. Figure it out yourself. I'll talk to you about it later. And then you never come talk to me about it later. And if I can't have that, I mean, I feel...
It's interesting that she's talking about practical matters. So maybe I'm not understanding this conversation, which I wouldn't be surprised by. But if I was to take a guess, I would say he's talking about emotional safety, and she has a hard time talking about that kind of thing. So she's thinking about the practical side, and she's saying, I need that, and it's a proxy for other kinds of emotional things. Yeah, having said that, everyone would want people to be responsive to specific requests, and I'm guessing that, well, let's see what he says.
I feel like I'm doing... I feel like I'm just doing my life by myself. That's not what I signed up for.
But Mary, listen, I'm not trying to be mean about this, but
I'm not saying you're being mean.
You said get out of my life. You said get out of my life.
Wow, that's different than what we were being told. Get out of my life. Yeah, that's a divorce. I didn't realize that. The way they were talking about it before, it was leave me alone or don't come around the house anymore, but get out of my life. That's the end of a relationship. And no matter how you slice it, that's going to hurt him. That would be, just imagine how hurtful that would be. Yeah. Or at the very least, just how clarifying it is. Sometimes you're just like, well, things are a little cold between me and that person. And then all of a sudden they're like, get out of my life. You're like, okay, that brings it in. It's crystal clear how you feel about me. So, all right, then I will turn off to you too. You've not only turned off, but you hate me. So I'll turn off, and that'll be that. And I'll drift away. There's also a possibility that he's punishing her, but, by continuing, even though she's trying to get back. But I don't know. The way it looks is I would guess that she's all bottled up and uptight because of her being traumatized and having a hard time. She might not, like I was saying earlier, she might think, well, I know I was being manipulated, but there were some things in there that I think I still... Actually, she does. So this is something that we can talk about generally, that if you are in a cult that is high control or in a abusive relationship that is high control, typically they'll gaslight you and brainwash you. And it takes a long time to extract your mind. For people, it's not well understood or appreciated, even by therapists, that like right now, it's tempting to look at her after it's been a year or two since being catfished, since she drew a line with the catfisher. And by the way, I don't know if I showed this clip, but she said that she drew a line with the catfisher because she suspected that it was the woman who was catfishing her, and so because she had met up with the woman in person, and she demanded to meet with the guy, and she said, "Look, if we don't meet up, then we're done, because I'm going to assume that you're not real," or something like that. And there was all this hemming and hawing and even threats to her. And she says, "Look, we'll continue to talk if we meet in person." Which also just makes me wonder, because if you're concluding that he's abusive and you're being victimized, you would think that, well, so I don't know. Anyway, so meaning that maybe there was a part of her that was still holding out that this actually might be legit and might be something that she would want to continue with. But there's another possibility that she was just completely wrapped up in the victimization and she was just using this lever to get out of it. At any rate, there were a number of different proposed meetings. I think she even would show up at a place and say, "Look, you either meet me here and I will respond, or we're done. And if you keep contacting me, then I'm going to block you. I'm not going to respond," something like that. And then that's what she drew the boundary. Anyway, so what was I saying? So with that high control relationship, once that relationship ends, she's been talking about how she's still trying to sift through all the brainwashing. And a big part of that, I'm guessing, sounds like a large part of it has to do with Cody. And given that he has been told to get out of her life, he has been keeping his distance, right? So on one hand, she knows that she was brainwashed and manipulated. On the other hand, her brain hasn't been fully extracted yet. And so trying to sift through that, what she needs is a therapist that specializes in this, and she needs individual therapy, of course. I'm sure I thought this, if I haven't said it out loud, because extracting your mind from so if you've been in an abusive relationship or you've been in a high control group like a cult, it's incredibly important that you attend to that, because you can look at someone. Oh, that's what I was saying. I think was you can look at Mary and say, "Well, that relationship ended a long time ago. She's good." No, she's even mentioned this. Yeah, sure, the relationship is over, or you're out of the cult, or you divorced the abusive person, or maybe even the abusive person is behind bars or something. But your mind is still in it. You don't have your mind back yet. And how do you sift through your own mind and pick and choose what is real? There are people, it's more obvious when you talk to people who grew up in a cult, a high control religious group. Like when I was doing the Duggar deep dive and all that kind of stuff, and the IBLP religious group, there are people that have extracted themselves, and it'll be like 10, 20 years after they've left and their life is going well. And then all of a sudden they'll realize, oh, I'm still operating on this old, completely false notion that I was brainwashed on as a kid. And I've never thought about it until now that that's yet another thing I have to discard. You know, like, I'm trying to think of an example. I'm trying to think of an example that you all might be able to relate. Some of you who have extracted yourself from high control, abusive relationships. Like an idea that you're worthless, maybe. I mean, that's a pretty obvious one, but it that could stick around. Maybe something specific like you're bad in bed. A lot of abusive partners will be abusive verbally and emotionally and gaslight about your sexual abilities or your appeal or attractiveness or something. And that one is harder to dismantle because we have so many taboos in our society about even talking about it. And it also kind of requires trial and error and experience, and it can take a long time before you're ready to open up. And it's hard to open up when you've been abused in that way in the past. So it can be hard to dismantle. But I will have clients where 10, 20 years later, they will come to me and having talked about the brainwashing and the gaslighting, and they know to be looking out for those things, they'll come into my office and they'll be like, oh my God, I discovered another thing that I was having sex with my partner, and I realized that not everyone is walking around with as much body shame as I am. I mean, some people are, but I always just figured that we should all be ashamed, particularly women. We should just be completely ashamed of our bodies and of our private parts or whatever. You know, it's just one example. And I'm now realizing that you know, it was a subtle brainwashing that occurred when I was young, but I always just figured it was normal, or I just never really had a chance to dismantle that or unpack that and look at it. And now I feel like I need to do a lot of work on how I see my own body and how I see women's bodies. And I'm even like not even sure if I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure intellectually that I know that I'm wrong, but I feel like I'm right. So this is yet another thing that this cult is still in my brain 15 years later, and I'm really angry about it. Anyway, so I think that Mary is she has a lot of signs that she's still in that, and it's, you know, it's horrible because abuse and victimization is the gift that keeps on giving, and it's a morbid joke, but even so, it could be argued that for Mary, even though she has extracted herself from the abuse and the manipulation and the catfishing, the catfisher is still in control of her because the ideas are still in her mind. And what it does is it causes her to push people away, which further isolates her and keeps her in that position, could even motivate her to go back to the catfisher or to the abuser, which happens sometimes, you know? So I think that's what we're seeing. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. So it's December, and for me anyway, the holiday season is filled with fond memories. I know that's not true for everyone, but regardless of one's personal experiences, I think that December is a good time to get a nice cozy blanket and get cozy, that kind of thing, at least for those of us in the northern latitudes. And speaking of getting cozy, I suppose, one could say that therapy is a great place to get cozy. Cozy with ourselves, to wrap the warm blanket of therapy around us. And with the advent of online therapy, you can even stay home and go to therapy and sit on your favorite couch and be wrapped up in your favorite blanket. Well, one place you can find a therapist to do this with is at BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's definitely worth giving a try. So find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
Don't remember rejecting that.
There's a lot you don't remember.
Mary and I going back to see Nancy is not a big deal. And in this case, it's just a matter of going to see Nancy so we can communicate clearly and safely about the struggle that we're having with this whole thing.
Now, I'll just throw it out there. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that would... I'm always just wondering what the general audience discourse is around the show, and I have seen little signs here and there that everyone hates Cody, or not everyone, but a lot of people. And, maybe that's... And I've been accused recently of being sexist because I'm always defending the men or something, which, I can't avoid being a man and having my bias, and I accept that and try to account for it, or at least speak tentatively about things. But I guess I'm worried about that. So I'll say that, for the record, that there's a possibility that he is being manipulative right now, that he doesn't care, he's never cared. I mean, I'm sort of being exaggeratory in a way, but it is possible, or at least it's more in that direction, right? And he's just playing it up for the cameras. He's trying to act like he cares in front of the camera when he really doesn't. And he should have been there for her. He should have been more inquisitive. He should have been closer to her. He should have never been in a polygamous relationship. He should have just stayed married to Mary and never married anyone else, because to do so is to be a narcissist and want the world to revolve around you. There's a lot of possibilities, and maybe in later seasons we'll find data. So, I'll stay open to it. I'll keep that column open.
But I don't think avoidance is how we're going to get there.
I'm not avoiding it. We'll go see Nancy, and I'll reach out to Mariah and see if I can't figure some of this out. And we'll do whichever comes first when it comes. Okay. All right? Okay.
I'm just really curious as to what's going on with both of them. Mary seems to be, at least emotionally, saying, hey, Cody, you've been rejecting me, and that's unfair. So I wonder what that is about. He would say, well, you told me to get out of your life. I got out of your life. And he's not directly saying this, but I think he doesn't feel safe to return or even to open up because of her telling him to get out of her life. And I'm guessing that was not just a one-time thing that she said. I think, there's probably a lot of other context there. But the question I would have, that I've been having, is what's in their heart? Are they open? Is he open does he want to try to reconnect? Because if he doesn't, then he's just playing a game, or he's in denial. And for her, does she really want to reconnect? Because if I saw him say, look, Mary, what happened was really, really hurtful to me. I loved you, and I guess that I still do, but in a different way. And I'm willing to, talk about getting it back. But to have the love of my life, you, tell me to get out of your life for things that I didn't think were justified, I had to let go. And so I did. This was years ago that this happened, that you told me to do this. And I'm really hurt. And I would love to have it back, I guess, as long as I knew that wouldn't happen again, or something like that would happen again. The whole thing made me wonder if you ever loved, just something along those lines. Then I think it would point in the direction of where his heart is at. If he really wants her back, or if he's a human being. I assume there's something like that in him, but without him saying that, it just comes across like he's just doing a business transaction, but it's very common for people to be clammed up in a situation, particularly like this, given the scenario. And for her to say something like, I feel confused and hurt, and I felt rejected by you kind of before even the catfishing thing happened. Not that you were doing it actively necessarily, but I just felt like I was a distant second to Robin or something like that, and Christine. And I've always said to because she has said, and it appears that way, she's the peacekeeper in the family. Although they actually went down, they had a whole episode, which is kind of interesting, about them talking about the beginning of their family and how when Janelle entered the family, it was really hard for Mary. Mary did not want, or, on paper, Mary did want Janelle to be around, because consciously, the way that the story went down, Mary actually was reaching out to Janelle to enter the family because Janelle had married Mary's brother, I think. Yeah, Janelle married Mary's brother and divorced after a year. And then I think Mary felt bad, maybe because of is Mary's brother, right? So Mary's like, oh, I feel bad for Janelle that my brother did that to her, whatever. I don't know what the circumstance. And then even though she's not like super hunky-dory about it, she starts to invite Janelle into the situation. And then they get married, and Cody is trying to do the right thing by being a good double husband. And then Mary, apparently, when Janelle moved in, would be really argumentative with Janelle, and Janelle was shutting down, which we see, that's her pattern now. And it sounds really interesting. And they, I think over a number of years, eventually they just learned to just quietly hate each other, is the way it looks. Christine entered the family soon after Janelle, I think a year after, and she was the go-between. She was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize this was happening, so I guess I have to like smooth things over between these two. And it helped. And Christine also just said, okay, I'll just do what they do, in terms of like style of marriage and all that kind of stuff. So I guess I should mention all that because they went into detail about that, and it was interesting. But I'm saying all this because there's a chance that for Mary, as it often will do, even in monogamous marriages, that the kids are starting to move out and something like this happens, affair, and everything's thrown into question, and you question, what have I been doing this whole time? Should I have even been married to this person to begin with? I don't know. What do I want? I've been eking by, I've been managing my life, but is this really what I want? It just feels so foundationless, like it's so empty. Building a house on sand, as they say in the Bible, right? And it can be really terrifying. So I kind of feel like that's where Mary's at. And I think she wants something to grab onto because she doesn't know, because she doesn't have an internal sense of what she wants because she's never been given that chance. And I think she's very half-heartedly grasping for Cody, but I think Cody detects that she isn't really reaching out to Cody from her heart. She just is grasping at anything that she can grab onto, and it's felt as sort of half-hearted from her. And I don't know. I'm just taking a lot of guesses. All right. Well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.